All right. Greetings, everybody. May peace and power and elevation be to all of you. This your girl Tiffany coming through live in effect. All right. What's up, everybody? This your girl Tiffany coming through live in effect. And as you guys can see, that I'm going to be dealing with a topic, deal with Black history. So I want to be able to I'm trying to get over here. Okay. So anyways, so I'm going to be dealing with a topic about Black history. And today's topic is going to be dealing with James Forten. James Forten was an abolitionist and an entrepreneur. So today, that's what we're going to be focusing on. So with that being said, let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay. All right, so I don't know if you guys can see my screen. Let me make sure. Okay, so the story is about James Forten. All right. Sorry about that. Sorry about the delay. I just had to make sure that my screen is working. Okay, so anyways. So the history is about James Forten. James Forten was an African American abolitionist, right? Okay. Oops. Yeah, he was an abolitionist and a wealthy businessman in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Born free in the city, he became a sailmaker after the American Revolutionary War. Following an apprenticeship, he became the foreman and bought the sail loft when his boss retired. Based on equipment he himself had developed, he established a highly profitable business. It was located on the busy waterfront of the Delaware River in an area now called Penn's Landing. So this is a picture of him right here. Okay, this is a portrait of him. All right, and then it says, Forten used his wealth and social standing to work for civil rights for African Americans in both the city and nationwide. Beginning in 1817, he opposed the colonization movement, particularly that of the American Colonization Society. He affirms Americans' claim to a stake in the United States of America. He persuaded William Lloyd Garrison to adopt an anti-colonization position and help fund his newspaper, The Liberator, which was around 1831 and 1865, frequently publishing paper letters on public issues. He became vice president of the biracial American Anti-Slavery Society, founded in 1833, and worked for the national abolition of slavery. His large family was also devoted to these causes, and two daughters married the Prevost Privers brothers, who used their wealth as leaders for abolition. All right, so that's his story. So as we can see, that he was abolitionist and an entrepreneur. He ran his own business, but he was very active in bringing about the end into slavery and those type of things. So let's go ahead and continue. So it says he was born free in Philadelphia on September 7, 1776. Right, he was one of two children of Thomas and Margaret Forten. Thomas Forten was the grandson of a slave who had freed himself. All right. However, Thomas Forten died young, and his son James started to work at the age of 7 to help his mother and sister. At first, he was a chimney sweeper. He later becoming a grocery store clerk. He also attended the African school ran by Quaker abolitionist Anthony Bezat, who founded it to educate black children free of charge. His mother insisted that he continue in school, but by the age of 9, Forten had left school to work full-time. His early years of work became a measure for progress in his life and career. All right, so then it goes down to say Forten was fortunate as he exchanged after 7 months imprisonment. He was released on parole, and his promise not to fight in the war. He walked from Brooklyn to Philadelphia. He walked from Brooklyn to Philadelphia to return to his mother and sister. He signed up on a merchant ship which sailed to England. He lived and worked there for more than a year in London shipyard. Okay, when Forten returned to Philadelphia in 1790, he became apprenticed to sail maker Robert Bridges, his father's former employer and a family friend. Forten learned quickly in the sail loft. This was where the large ship's sails were cut and sold. Before long, the young man was promoted to foreman. All right. And so then go down here to talk about his career. Okay, he retired at Bridge retirement in 1798. Forten bought the sail loft. All right. And then it says Forten, by 1810, Forten had built one of the most successful sail lofts in Philadelphia. He created a condition he worked for in society, employed both blacks and white workers. Because of his business acumen, Forten became one of the wealthiest Philadelphians in the city, black or white. All right. Then it talks about his marriage. Okay, he was married twice. His wife's name was Martha Beatty. She died only after a few months of marriage. In 1806, he married Charlotte Van Dyne. James and Charlotte Forten had 9 children. Robert Bridge Forten, Margarita, Harriet, Sarah, Louisa, Charlotta, William Dees, Mary Teresa, and Thomas William Francis, and James Jr. Robert and James Jr. succeeded their father in the family sail making business. All right. And then it says the children grew up in and committed to the abolitionist movement. Robert, named for his father's former boss and mentor, was a vigorous anti-slavery activist. So basically, and his granddaughter name was Charlotte Forten Gimmick, who became a poet, a diarist, and an educator. So basically, most of this man's life, he was focusing on activism. He was focused on activism more than he was focusing on anything else. So his main thing was to free African Americans from slavery, and also running a slave ship. I mean, not a slave ship. I'm sorry. He was running a ship company, in which made him one of the most wealthiest black men in Philadelphia during his time. All right. So let's see. Let's continue on with his story. Oops. All right. So it go down here to talk about his public activism. And right here, it says in 1813, he wrote a pamphlet called Letters from a Man of Color, published anonymously. Seeing external links below, many people knew that he had written it. He denounced a bill under the consideration in Pennsylvania legislature that required all black immigrants to Philadelphia to be registered with the state and protest treating free blacks any differently than white. Some legislators were worried about the number of free blacks who migrated in the state, competing with white laborers. In addition, they knew fugitive slaves often used Pennsylvania as a destination or byway to free areas, and it was bordered by slave states to the south. All right. So he felt like those who was being free should not be treated less or undermined than those who are of Caucasian descent. Okay. And then it says Forten had supported Paul Coffin, a Boston shipbuilder who in 1815 transported 38 free blacks to Sierra Leone with the idea they could make a better life were not impeded by white racism. He was well aware of continuing problems due to harsh discrimination against blacks in the United States. All right. So then let's see what else he did. Let's skip on down. So down here it says that James Forten managed his cell loft and stayed active in the abolitionist movement until very late in his life, continuing to write for the Liberator. He died on March the 4th, 1842, at the age of 75 of Philadelphia. Thousands of people, both blacks and white, attended his funeral. Free American blacks continued to move to Liberia during the 19th century. They created a society that repeated many colonial assumptions. Americo-Liberians, although a minority in the nation, dominate politics and economy well into the late 20th century. As early as 1853, African Americans were restudying the issues of immigration to Africa. A report by the Colored National Convention held in Rochester, New York that year condemned the oppression of Liberia's native population. Its leader, King Boya, had appealed to Britain in 1851 for aid against the Americans' encroachment on his country. All right, so that's his gravestone right here. It says James Forten, 1766 to 1842, head of the American Revolution. All right. And then down here, there's some more reference if you want to read it up for yourself. Portrait of James Forten, a gentleman of color, the life of James Forten. And then you got some archives over here. Then you got further reading. External link. All right. So let's look at something else real quick. Okay, right here. There's an article called "A Man of Feeling, a Man of Color, James Forten, the Rise of African American Deliberative Rhetoric." So it starts off with the abstract saying this study examines the rhetorical practice of James Forten, an African American activist of the early republic, focusing on four texts written between 1800 and 1832 for white audience, and considering Forten's effort to align white readers with the plot of both free and enslaved American blacks. I explored pathos, particularly as conceived by 18th century Scottish rhetoricians. The supplement ethos appeals based on Pennsylvania and U.S. legal and political tradition and arguments addressing the practical concerns of the audience. Through the such analysis, uh, Through the such analysis, I demonstrated Forten's pioneering role in the development of African American deliberative rhetoric. All right, so right here it says in 1771, Scotsman Henry Mackenzie published A Man of Feeling, a brief episodic novel whose impractical but good-hearted hero hardly demonstrated an exquisite sensitivity towards the emotion of the afflicted. Naturally drawn to those who experience pain and sorrow, he epitomized the 18th century perception derived from common sense philosophy that although suffering is specific to individuals, its effects on the unprejudiced spectator is universal. Rhetorically unsophisticated and fundamentally lacking the prudence necessarily to survive in the callous world he inhabits. Harley was not nonetheless intended and interpreted benevolently as a sentimental archetype. So then it goes on to say right here, it is impossible to know if James Forten, a prosperous African American sailmaker and activist of the early republic who wrote a formative series of deliberative arguments in behalf of the black community, specifically addressed to white audience, read Mackenzie's novel, but his rhetoric reveals that, like the Scott's novel's most famous character, this man of color too placed great stock in strong passion and the common emotional bond of humanity. It says, in fact, one might even characterize Forten's rhetorical persona as a man of feeling, a rhetor who emphasizes the powerful emotion that motivate his argument. On the other hand, Forten's discourse, unlike the simple, spontaneous communication of Mackenzie, protagonist, demonstrates both careful strategy and sophisticated civic engagement. While resonating with the vital spirit of the popular Scott novel, Forten's persuasion depends upon purposive appeals to the passion more closely aligned with another 18th century Scott tradition, the rhetorical theories of Adam Smith, George Campbell, Lord Kane, and Huff Blair. Furthermore, in contrast with Harley's monolithic concentration on pity and compassion, Forten's discourse, which evolves significantly over the early decades of the 1800s, relies on a variety of strategies and appeals to advocate for the rights of African Americans. So that was the little story regarding to that's an article that's regarding to the life of James Forten and his story that he written, or the book that he written, which is called A Man of Color. So yeah, and how he was influenced. So he was influenced by a Scot named Henry Mackenzie. All right. So let's see. That's the article right there. All right. It's written by Glenn McClish, A Man of Feeling, A Man of Color, James Forten, and the Rise of African American Deliberative Rhetoric. Okay. And here's the website up here. Oops. Yeah, which is called watermark.civilchair.com. All right, so let's see what else can we find over here. All right, so this one is also an article which is called James Forten, Forgotten Abolitionist, written by Ray Allen Billeton, Negro History Bulletin, November 1949, Volume 13, Number 2, Association for the Study of African American Life and History. Okay, and then here's the website right here where I got highlighted. All right, so it was written in 1949, and then it goes into the story about him and his life, give more accounts on it. So, okay, it says the most important single incident in American anti-slavery crusade was the conversion of William Lloyd Garrison and Theodore Dwight Weld to a belief in racial equality. These two men of 2000 and the 2000 who flocked to their standard held that no biological differences distinguish Negroes from white. As this was the case, they argued the slaves should be emancipated either immediately or gradually, then educated and equipped to share the responsibility of society with their fellow citizens. Social and political equality for all Americans was the objective of abolitionists from the day that Garrison proclaimed his intention to be as harsh as truth and uncompromising as justice until the last slave was free. All right. Let's see what else can we find. So as you go further down, you'll read more information. And then it goes down to say that the importance of Forten's view on racism cannot be overestimated. Unlike most reformers, even among Negroes, he was convinced that no biological differences distinguish white and blacks. In this conviction, he anticipated the abolitionists of a later day. Indeed, the basic concept underlying abolitionism was nowhere better expressed before 1820 than in his outspoken letters. All right. So this is the article right here. It's a very old article. It was written in 1949. Okay. So anyways, that concludes the information about daily Black history dealing with James Forten. So if you want to learn more, you can go ahead and check it out. And also, if you have not subscribed to my channel, please do so. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you're also watching from Facebook, you can go ahead and share the video on Facebook. Until then, you guys, please take it easy. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I will talk to you guys later. May peace and power elevation be to all of you. Deuces. All right.